Welcome to Butterflies of Wisdom, everyone. Today, not only do you have me, by the time you guys hear this, it will be bright and early Wednesday morning, so you guys get a dose of how to write a book with Kathy and I educating you, because I'm not only author, but Miss Kathy Sparrow is author. I believe she's written one book and co-authored two, and I am going to let Miss Kathy take it away.
Oh, thank you very much. Not only, let's see, I think I've written more than one, just different, under a different name. But On the Mother Lagoon was my first book about 10 years ago. And then just recently, Ignite Your Leadership, Proven Tools for Leaders to Energize Teams, Fuel Momentum, and Accelerate Results. And that was a project that I led and co-authored with 10 of my colleagues from Jack Canfield's Train the Trainer alumni. And then recently I was in the anthology, The Innovators, Revolutionary Ideas from Today's Consulting Leaders. And then in that book, I actually wrote a chapter called It's All in the Cast, A Fly Fisher's Guide to Leadership. So fly fishing writing has always been hand in hand with me. And I guess I could say I'm a midwife. Yeah.
Who often respects them there?
Well, there's a lot of really famous fly fishing writers, and most of them are men. Ernest Hemingway was one of them. So I like to say I keep good company. Yeah. But in addition to writing my own books, I've also, I would like to say, midwifed. I've helped other aspiring writers, a lot of coaches and trainers really just, figure out what their message is and the best way to convey that message. And a lot of times it takes the form of not only books, but blogs, social media posts, and even then developing content for curriculum, for an online course or for a workshop.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. You guys, those of you who blog out there, and we can go into this further, Kathy and I, you could take your blog content, format it for Kindle, and have an ebook in 2 seconds flat if it's already edited. The editing portion takes, people think writing a book takes a huge amount of time. Writing a book doesn't take a huge amount of time. It's the editing and then the marketing aspect. Oh boy, the marketing aspect, you take on a totally different kettle of fish.
Yeah, and I'd like to think of book writing as similar to building a house. If you start to build a house and just start slamming, boards together and throwing windows wherever, you get kind of a hodgepodge of a house. You could often open up the door thinking that you're done and finding out you've forgotten your electricity and your plumbing. So I think a lot of our writing time is in the time away from the computer. It's the mind mapping, and I don't mind map on a computer, even though there's lots of mind mapping programs. I like to sit with my drawing pad, and that's my planning stage. That's where I gather my ideas, gather my building materials, and then I decide what I'm going to address. Then I write, and then I go back and polish. And I think that's where a lot of writers skip a step and can get into trouble. I've seen it many, many, many times. So I can't emphasize enough that while it can be a quick process, it's also good to take that time to slow down and plan. However, I will say also, if you've been writing for quite a while, I don't, like my blogs, I don't often mind map them. I just sit down and because I've been writing for 30 years, I can sit down and write and get my point across. However, I also revise. I even revise my emails. So,
yeah, revise your emails. How do you feel about speech dictation. I've been dying to ask you this particular question because, as you know, maybe you don't know this, I have a physical disability called hemiplegia cerebral palsy. And that is how I write my books. I use Siri on the iPad, Siri on the cell phone, Siri on the laptop, and then I will, on the occasion, use Dragon Naturally Speaking. And then my small editor, I'm going to make a big, huge, giant mess here for the next go-round for my book. I'm going to edit it before I hand it off to an editor like this, tomorrow, because I tend to hand things to an editor and then they have to make sense of it.
Yeah, and every time we give so I'm going to answer that first, then I'll go back to the Siri dictation. I think anytime we just, spew our thoughts on a paper, virtual or otherwise, and then hand it off to somebody, we're giving our power away. We're giving our story away, and then it becomes interpreted through that person's viewpoint. I mean, it's just, they're bringing themselves to the process. And some do it well, and some overstep their bounds. and because they're frustrated writers in their own right. A little interesting fact is when I work with a client's words, I actually hear their voices in my head and edit using their words, their dictate, their word choices, their cadence. So that's pretty cool. So I think kudos that you've decided to do that you're going to do your own editing first and then send it to somebody. Then we always need to. I send my work out for editing because you get so close to it, and you know what you want to say, or we know what we want to say, but we might forget those little details that would help a reader understand our point more. When I teach this in the university level, which I also teach writing there, I explain to my students, I tell them a little story about how when I was first learning to fly fish on the lower Laguna Madre in Texas, that it was 6 months and I couldn't catch a redfish. I was just absolutely frustrated, almost gave up fly fishing. And my then husband said, okay, well, let's go out tomorrow morning. I know where there's some potting redfish. So he said, all you have to do is walk up to them slowly and then cast your fly right into the middle of the pod. And a pod is a group of redfish, and they're feeding on the bottom, and their tails stick out of the water, surface of the water. So I did just that. And I saw a fish come up, look at my fly, and then it just turned and went away. And my husband comes over and says, what did you do? And I told him exactly, I cast right into the middle of the pod. And the fish came up and turned away. And he said, didn't you strip the fly? And I went, you didn't tell me that. And as writers, we often forget to tell our readers to strip the fly, and then they're sitting there going.
Oh, my, I have to now use that line with my editor. Oh, my God. I now have to strip the fly in my own writing. Not with this book. The editor. But my next book, my next teen novel, you guys, I'm sick and tired of writing memoirs. My very good friend of mine actually taught me the other day. She goes, Wynn, have you focused on your books? All I hear about is podcasting. All I see on your Facebook profile is podcasting. Where are the books? And I said, well, I'm slowly but surely working on a new one. But I need to strip the fly on my book now because I had my editor a big, huge mess. And she's like, oh, Wynn, what did you give me? What did you give me? A big, huge mess. So we're slowly but surely working on this book. Hopefully it will be polished enough in August. I hope. But I need to. You're right, Kathy. I now on my next book, I need to strip the 5 and like, and then send it off to my editor.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now I'll go back to your question about dictation. I think it's awesome. I write on the keyboard. However, there are times when I'm, may get a thought either in the middle of the night or if I'm, walking across campus or taking a walk or whatever, and I'm not going to stop to, do my keyboard on my phone or my whatever. And so I'll use Siri. I think Siri's awesome. I love Apple products. I have my MacBook Air and my iPhone and my iPad, and I actually did training for Apple for a while, taught people how to use their devices. So I think it's an absolute wonderful tool, and it's probably even a time-saving tool because when you speak it, you don't get. Well, yeah, you do have an opportunity to edit. I mean, I'm thinking about emails and things like that, and text messages. But I think also there are people who they know what they want to say, and it's easier to speak it than it is to get it from their minds through their tips of their fingers. And I hear that from. Yeah,
I know what I want to say, but I can't type to save my life. I can't type to save my life, and so that's why I use Siri and the notepad on my iPhone to write my stories. Or
I think that's perfect
on my iPhone too. So you like Siri, and if you don't mind me asking, where do you teach?
Oh, I teach at National University and also Southwestern College. Southwestern College is a community college in the south of San Diego, along the border. So a lot of my students are come across the border every day. Many of them are Spanish speaking primarily, and
wow, my goodness.
Yeah, and then I also teach at National University, and that is a fast-track university where the semesters are 1 month. And what I teach in 16 weeks, I teach in a month. And most of these students are either military or former military. So they're a little bit older, and so they're used to having some discipline and, having to do things a little in a little more mature way. So they're fun, and that's where I teach.
So you don't teach writing skills to, or maybe you do, I don't know. You don't teach writing skills to English as a second language students, do you?
Well, I do. I'm not ESL certified, but I do have many students who are primarily Spanish speaking, or some even, I had some students from Saudi Arabia last year, some Chinese students. So I do get students like that. And even though I'm not certified, I've had a lot of experience with ESL students because before I moved to California, I lived in Deep South Texas, and I taught at the University of Texas Pan American, which is now University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. And I would say, I think I think the statistics at that time were 88% of the students were primarily Spanish speaking. Most of them were first generation college students and often first generation high school grads. So, I
have a friend as we speak right now. She's actually my aide, quite frankly, and she's in the process right now of getting her GED.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's perfect.
Yeah, she and I have talked. She goes, American history is so confusing to me, but we haven't necessarily got to the writing part. She speaks English fluently, and she's a phenomenal person to hang out with too. And she's now in the process of getting her GED, and she's trying but I give all the college students the credit of everything because I'm actually all the college student. I don't know if you guys know this. Kathy doesn't know this, but I am going back to school to finally pursue my degree and my passion in journalism. Thank you very much. In journalism,
Awesome.
about writing, talk about totally different educational spectrum from early childhood education. Jeez. And so it's going to improve my writing tenfold. It's going to improve my podcasting, so I hope tenfold. Kathy, I'm going to ask you the favorite child question. What has been the favorite book you have written or been a part of?
Oh gosh, I can't say there's one favorite. As far as business, I would say Jack Canfield's The Success Principles. That's been my Bible. As far as a person or an author who inspires me in a literary way, I have two favorite authors. I would say one is David White, and he's a great poet. Love his essays and his poetry. And I often teach out of his book, Crossing the Unknown Sea, Work as a Pilgrimage of Identity. And he really identifies where we get our passion for our craft, for our mission. He speaks of, knowing at age 8 he loved poetry, and he moved away from it, became a marine zoologist, and then in his adult years moved back into poetry. The other author that I absolutely love, and she does both nonfiction and fiction, is Sue Monk Kidd. For fiction, Secret Life of Bees is, that was one of her more famous ones. And then she's written a lot of memoir type books, and one of them comes to mind is Traveling with Pomegranates, which she wrote with her daughter. I just love their authenticity and their willingness to be vulnerable in their writing, and that's what I model for my clients too. I think it's important.
Hey, Kathy, you stole my next question. You segued right into my next question, and I didn't want to interrupt you. But my next question was, what is your favorite book? And it doesn't have to be a business book.
I would say those two. Crossing the Unknown Sea, Work as Pilgrimage of Identity is definitely one of my favorites. Traveling with Pomegranates is another. I just love books, so it's hard for me to say just one. It would be like asking me which of my children is my favorite, and I can't say because they both have different qualities.
You love them all. You love them all. Good. Kathy, you weren't involved with chicken soup for this all, were you?
No.
No.
I've read a few of those, but I've not had a story included. No.
Okay. You just thought, because you mentioned you had worked with Jack Canfield, and I know he's famous for the chicken soup series.
Right. I met him after that had already become pretty famous, and I think even after he had sold it. So I trained with Jack, and I was on his assisting team, and live and breathe his work with a capital W, and use that in my work too. So even bring it into my classroom, get my kids to think about the success principles, what it takes to be successful in the world. So
that's okay. And have you ever had an author come in and speak on diversity and writing books?
In my classroom?
In your classroom, yes.
Yeah, no, I've not had them actually come into the classroom. I do encourage my students to go to the sessions on campus where there are, diversity speakers that come to campus all the time, and I encourage them to go write an essay about what they've seen and get some extra credit for that. Yeah.
Good.
I think that's important that, that we lose the labels. We look at each other as individuals, not as, whatever label we happen to be walking around with,
Whatever label we happen to be walking around with, cerebral palsy, who turned 30 in 2 weeks, yikes. Yes, I said 30 in 2 weeks, yikes. That's a little yikes. But Kathy, where can people find you, and how can people get a hold of you, and how can people get their stories out of them and get off their asses and get their stories out of them, and with your help and my help and Create Spaces help, which Create Space is an entity of Amazon, you guys, and ACX, you can write a story. Kathy can show you how, I can show you how basically just tap into all knowledge. Thank you very much. And Kathy, where can people find you?
So my website is kathysparrow.com, and it's KATHYSPARROW.com. And there's a contact form on there, and they can send me an email that way. And let's see, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very visible there. I have a Facebook page called Writing at Your Edge, and that's easily accessible as well.
So, yeah, people can get in contact with you. And, Kathy, my last question before I turn the mic on you is, if you had to be educated by anyone inside or outside your field, who would it be and why?
Oh, wow. I asked this similar question to my students. Once again, there's so many. I think that there's two people I would love to have lunch with, to have a half hour to pick their brains, and that would be Richard Branson, Sir Richard Branson. I'd like to know how he gets his creativity, how he keeps going. The other is Arianna Huffington. I think they're both really successful people and have a lot they could share. Arianna, particularly for women, she was trying to do it all and knocked herself out, and now is doing this whole sleep revolution thing. And I think that's one thing that, as women, we need to know that we have our limits. We can't, we have to nurture ourselves before we can go out and save the world. So that's why I would want to spend some time with her. And I think the two authors earlier, love to spend time with David White, and also with Sue Monk Kidd, just to have a short conversation even.
Have a short conversation, yes. And if anyone's listening who can get in contact with Miss Huffington, Adriana, please, 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 this is Wednesdayathon, send them my way, please, because I would love to interview her. I would absolutely love to interview her. So that would be my dream guest. That would just be my dream guest. Maybe if I put that out to the universe, that would happen. And
that's right.
That interview like there's no tomorrow. I'm sure Kathy would be fascinated if I got Adriana Huffington on my podcast. But we'll see. We'll see. That could happen. Never know. Never know. And Kathy,
I have two friends who know Richard.
Manson.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I did. I was thinking of their names. I know two friends, so I'm once removed. So it could happen. When it could happen that Arianna Huffington could be your next guest.
Richard Branson would be a good one too. Yeah, I think Richard Branson would be a good one too if I could spare 5 minutes with him.
Yeah, so.
Richard and Adriana Huffington, those are my 2 dream guests, you guys. So I'm sticking that out to the universe, and we'll see what happens.
That's right.
And Kathy, before I let you go, I'm going to let you turn the mic on me and ask me 2 to 4 questions about anything that you've been dying to ask me.
Okay. So my first question is, what is your why? What makes you get up in the morning and just embrace the day?
My why, okay. My why is going to sound really stupid, but this is my why. My why is seeing another day of the life, because to give you guys a little bit of my history, and you guys will get a little bit of my history, small as I would call it, the podcast, which will also come out on Wednesday. And then you guys will get a big dose, almost a tear-jerking dose of my history. As of June 28th, I'm bringing on a very, 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 very special person who's not a biological family member in my life, and you guys are going to get a big dose of my life and why I wrote the book. But to answer Cassie's questions, my why is just to see another day and do the work I do and interview rock stars like you.
Awesome. And so now, who is your favorite author?
My favorite author, and you reminded me of my favorite book, and I forgot about my other favorite book. My favorite author is the woman that wrote The Secret of Life of Bees. Yes, you can find that on audio tape, and you totally jogged my memory. It's like, oh, I did listen to that book. And audio books are my favorite. So if anyone wants to hand me a subscription to Audible for my 30th birthday, I'll take it, because I'm a podcast not so much of a audiobook junkie. I should be, but I'm a podcast junkie at all. You don't know that by now. And so my favorite book is The Secret Life of Bees, or it happens to be 3 cups of tea, and written by Greg Mortensen. And I actually had the opportunity, believe it or not, he came to my community college at the time. I had a big enough, my community college was spread out that we had a big enough audience to hold him in the auditorium, and it was fascinating watching him speak. And my teacher, just like you, Kathy, said, well, why don't you go see Greg DeMonton and speak? And so I made the time and had a fascinating, he gave a fascinating conversation. So those are my 2 favorite books.
Yeah, I love 3 Cups of Tea. I taught that as well at one point. His work of bringing schools to the children in Afghanistan and Pakistan and is just incredible. So nice. We have a lot in common. Okay, if you could travel to any country in the world, where would it be and why?
Oh, Kathy, it would be California for the beaches. It would be California, particularly San Diego or Laguna Beach, again, for the beaches. I'm a beach bum. I'm sorry. I am a beach bum. Maybe that's because I spent half my life in the Caribbean, so I am so used to seeing white sands and beautiful beaches at in the summer, and I really miss the opportunities on going down there. I truly do, but my life has changed enough. So the closest beach to me would be California. So yes, that would be my my beach escape.
That's cool. So here's a real toughie.
Oh,
because my grandson asked me this question, and it stopped me. If you could live inside a word, what word would that be, and why?
If I could live inside a word, and what word would that be? I guess determination and winning, because they didn't make me win for nothing. And on June 28th, you guys will get the full story on why my name is Win, or maybe tomorrow I'll explain it. And so if I could live inside a one, it would be determination or winning.
Nice. Very good.
Well,
those are my 4 questions.
That question stopped me in my tracks.
I know, it stopped me in mine when I was asked it too.
Jeez, if you don't mind me asking, how old is your grandson?
Well, he will be 8 this weekend, but he asked that question of me about a year ago.
A 7-year-old. A 7-year-old.
Yes.
I'm like,
yeah.
Oh God, he must have.
I know.
Parents. He must have smart parents. Well, you're going to have to share this interview with him. You're going to have to make sure you send this interview to his mom or share it with him, because I'm like, geez, a 7-year-old does that, and obviously he knows you write books, doesn't he?
Oh yeah. In fact, Jude, Max, and I are writing a book together. So we're writing a children's book. Yeah, that's our summer project.
Well, I'm going to have to invite you guys back on the podcast when the kids' book is finished, and let those 2 munchkins speak too. And of course, let you speak, because I love children's books. I have written one myself and have, and am slowly producing autobiography, as I said, and so where can people find your books if they don't want to necessarily work with you, but they still want your wisdom?
Well, they can see my blog, and that has a lot of my wisdom. And then there's also all my books are on Amazon. On the Mother Lagoon is actually being revised. I'm doing that this summer, so that's going to come out again probably in September. But Ignite Your Leadership is on Amazon, and so is The Innovators, which is I think it should be on my author's page on Amazon. So
if you just go to Amazon and type in Kathy Spell, those books will pop up. And guys, if you go to Amazon and type in Win, W-I-N, Kelly, K-E-L-L-I, Charles, C-H-A-R-L-E-S, all my books will pop up. I have an author's page there too. And please, this is the Win's Degathon PSA. Any book you buy, whether it's traditionally published or whether it's self-published, or any book you buy, whether it's Kindle softcover, hardcover, please leave a review for the author or the publishing company, because all that does is help the Amazon ranking.
Yep, sure does.
And are your books self-published? I'm assuming they are.
No, they're not. No, they are not. I've had traditional publishing. Yeah.
Good.
I've been in the publishing world. I started out as a journalist. I was writing for magazines and community papers, and I interviewed a lot of people and got to hang out with some pretty cool people early in my career. I still get to hang out with cool people, but that's how I started. I was writing personality profiles. People like Kermit Love, who created Oscar the Grouch and Snuffleupagus for Sesame Street.
Oh my!
Yeah, Anita Roddick, who.
Okay. To end this interview on a high note, my first words out of my mouth were Oscar, as an Oscar the Grouch, and I didn't learn how to speak fluently until I was 4 years old. That's another whole story in itself. But my first words out of my mouth were Oscar the Grouch. So the fact that you got to interview the Muppeteer behind Snuffleupagus, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation. Yeah, if you guys don't know, well, the older generation knows what I'm talking about when I say Sesame Street, but the younger generation, they could give a flying banana what Sesame Street is. They know Elmo on the iPad, and that's about it. And so, and so the fact that you got to interview all these cool, see, that's why I want to go into journalism. I want to interview rock stars like you. For the past 4 years, I've been self-taught, and now I think it's time for me to step up my game and get the training.
Well, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yes. And I thank you for spending half an hour with me and sharing your books and sharing your story and sharing how to write books. And I thank everyone for listening. This podcast has been sponsored by Kitter, Kitter, and Kitter is a Twitter mother's helper, so to speak. You could compose the tweet, but the cool thing about them is they put the trending hashtag with it, so you guys don't get lost in the heap. This podcast is also sponsored by Grace by Grit. Grace by Grit is a clothing line out of San Diego, and they're giving you guys 20% off if you type in EXO Butterfly at checkout, and go check out their lines and just go have fun with that. And again, I thank Kathy for coming on this podcast and sharing her incredible journey. See you guys.
Thank you, Wynn. Thank you for having me.